Hello and welcome. Welcome to Sue Begent interviews smart women who mean business. And it's my absolute pleasure today to interview Dr. Yvonne Kay. Well, I'm going to come back to Dr. Kay in a moment, but I just would like to take a few minutes to introduce myself. I am Sue Begent and I'm your host. I'm having a few trouble with my words today. I'm a business coach and normally quite articulate. And I focus on empowering women, solo entrepreneurs and small business owners. People who've had a career and now want to use their experience and talents to support others and grow a successful business while they do it. My focus is to help them get the tools and skills that they need to create a consistent flow of great clients and a reliable income to go with it. And if you want to check me out, my website is www.cocreationzone.com. So, and with that, I have to tell you that I've just said I like to help women who've had a career or life experience that they want to turn into a career or business. And I think that actually defines my guest today. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have been looking forward to interviewing you because from the first moment I met you, I couldn't get over what a fascinating story you have. And also, I hope you don't mind me saying, age 86, you're amazing. And you
this September will be 86.
Oh, yeah. Oh, a fellow Virgo. Oh, no wonder.
Let's not go there.
So let me introduce Dr. Kay for a moment. And excuse me for reading this. She is a PhD addiction and bereavement specialist who believes in the power of the human spirit. At 86 years old, her career and rebel spirit are alive and well.
Oh, yes.
She's a spiritual coach, and her philosophy is laughter is the miracle healer. She works with bereaved parents, veterans with PTSD, people struggling with addiction, and those with end-stage cancer. Her story is truly one of redemption, of an indomitable spirit in the face of deeply disturbing challenges. From poverty, war, and early forced separation from her family, having only the clothes she stood up in, to addressing the United Nations on the subject of international drug dealing. Along the way, she raised 4 children, became a radio talk show host, I'm hoping to learn a few things, an interfaith minister, author, columnist, keynote speaker and trainer for corporations, to name just a few, and that's not a comprehensive list. And of course, she earned that PhD. So, welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you.
So, I would love to start off by asking you about your early life, because you started life in 1933 in London.
I did.
And that was quite a significant time period to be there. So tell us about your early life.
Well, as a child, of course, that age, I wasn't aware of what was going on, which started in 1933 in Germany.
Yes.
And I suppose it was relatively normal. I come from a dysfunctional family who doesn't. And I think that gave me strength, actually, even as a child. And then...
Can you tell me what you mean by that?
What do I mean by that? I had to make decisions of my own.
Okay.
And certainly from the age of 8, without doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just before my 6th birthday, war broke out.
Yes.
And we were away somewhere, and all the family just got up and left me there, and didn't tell me why. And that was...
And this is World War II.
Yes,
yeah.
It was very, very traumatic for a little girl. I couldn't get any answers about anything.
So you were evacuated?
Well, yes, we weren't, but I was left there, so yes, I was evacuated there for 6 months.
And this is where you lived at home?
I was in Canterbury, in Kent.
Oh, okay, right.
And I was there. And actually, those 6 months, partly, was just lovely, because it was a farm. And I used to have milk straight from the cow. Right. And I could play. But I didn't know what was going on when the radio came on and I'm hearing London's bombed and I'm panicking.
And your family was in London?
Yes. And so after 6 months I went back.
And was that was that your choice to go back?
Always.
Yes.
Always. Because this is what I've discovered over the years, that it doesn't matter how dysfunctional the family is. The children want to be there because it's familiar. We didn't care about the bombs. We were home.
Yes.
Whatever that meant.
Yes.
And so it was powerful for me from the age of 8 that I really became aware with what was going on. The people who were in London, and we were bombed out twice, and then the house was shattered, but we were able to stay.
Yes.
When we moved to Brixton, South London, where David Bowie was born. That's my claim to fame.
I have heard that you are a David
Bowie.
Bowie
Yes, my
fan.
claim to fame. And I became aware of these people who, when we were really hungry and had no home, would take care of us. If they had a piano, they'd be playing the piano or anti-Hitler songs,
Right.
which I better not repeat,
No,
even
maybe
at 8 years old.
Yes.
And they were my heroes. Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yep.
So that must have been quite a very formative a few years. I mean, because the war broke out when you were 6 and ended when you were 12.
Right, yes.
So what happened then? Once everything, because I mean, London was devastated.
Oh,
and of course the
absolutely.
recovery, you know, one tends to think, oh, well, the war was over. But of course there was an enormous period.
Right. And we were still having rations into the 50s.
Yes.
So there was a lot of rebuilding. But then, who arose to fame but Sir Oswald Mosley, the fascist person. And he came through Brixton because it was Jewish and black
Yes.
at that time. So those are the people he was going after.
Yes.
And he would ride in on his horses with his black shirts, with his truncheons and heaven knows what. And my foster brothers, two had been in the Navy, one in the Air Force. They used to go down and they would come back all beaten and bloody. So it's almost as if the war wasn't over. But a group arose and got rid of him. And then things began to just calm down. Now, as you probably know, in England, you don't go from grade school to middle school. You win. You have to take national scholarships. And I was very lucky. Toward the end of the war, I won a scholarship to Mary Datchler High School for Girls, which was in Camberwell. And I laugh when I hear young people complain about getting places. I had to go on 3 buses from the age of 9 or 10, something like that, to get to school. And the beauty of that was they had a cupboard there with used uniforms. And because we were poor.
Yes.
So I got a used uniform, and when I was in that uniform, I was like everybody else. And I was so proud. All the girls that were there that were fee paid hated the uniforms.
Yes.
I loved them, and I was able to be free to study.
And that's interesting because you say you were free to belong, which suggests that you weren't free to belong outside of school.
Oh, absolutely not. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Interesting.
Nothing like that.
So, what impact? Well, you've really talked about the impact of war on you and your family, and your education. So, tell us about your marriage and anything in between that you think, you know, because here's what I'm interested in. You've become this amazing healer and person who allows those who have addictions and all of these traumatic experiences. And I know that comes from your own background.
Oh, without doubt.
Yes.
In fact, when people ask me, why do you do these things? It's the war. I always say that. The Blitz did it. And when I was talking about those people and looking at those people, so kind and caring, at 8, I decided that's what I want to be. And I am. That's exactly. Because they had a lot of courage as I saw it, and compassion, kindness, but also very straightforward.
Yes.
Very down to earth, which I like that.
It's very interesting that those seeds can be planted so early, even if
Yes.
a whole life has to be lived before they can come to fruition.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, my marriage oh dear. Briefly, very briefly.
Yes.
I think in those days, one stayed in the parents' house until you got married.
Yes.
And I really think we got married to get out of each other's houses.
Yes.
And a lot of people in that generation did the same thing, and it was not good.
Yeah.
But I stayed for almost 27 years.
Wow.
And then I had this voice. Did I tell you about the voice?
No, please do.
Well, he came into the living room just before the silver wedding. And
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
and said, "What would you like?" Because he's never given me anything. So I said, "A divorce."
Oh.
The best thing I swear, I don't know where that
I was going to
voice
say, did you
came
know
from.
that was going to come out of your mouth?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's so
I mean,
funny.
I was the raging codependent who left my country because he wanted to. And so, and he was an absentee father and husband because he liked women. And so I had the 4 children. And then, I mean, there was no preparation. I was so shocked. I was as shocked as he was because I thought, where did that come from? And I won't ever forget the shock on his face because he was losing the person who would take care of the children and work and so on.
Do everything.
Yes.
Now, at that point, were you already in the States? Because I believe that
Yes.
it was he who, his work brought
Yes.
you. Is that correct?
Well, that's really hard to say, but yes. He wasn't part of the brain drain. The other one was, but not him. But he did very well. I feel that he was very troubled
Right.
because he didn't really have joy in his life. 2 of my children wouldn't talk with him because he was very abusive. But
So you sort of recreated, really, in a way, what you had experienced yourself as a child.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember my older son saying to me once, "If you ever go back, I'll lose all respect for you."
Oh, wow.
So I think they were waiting for me to do that.
Yes.
And then my life just went like that from there on.
It suddenly took off.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Moving country isn't a small thing either. And of course, you're listening to two
Yes.
two English voices here. So
This is the BBC.
we know. We both know. But tell me a little bit about that transition, because it just can't be underestimated.
No. And I was very, very homesick. And if people have not experienced it, it's almost impossible to describe, but very, very life-threatening. And I had 4 young children on my own, virtually. So that transfer, he came 3 months before me, so I had to sell the house, pack up the house. My youngest was 13 months.
Oh, wow.
And get over here. And then he said everything was fine for us, and we were just split up, going to various people's houses.
Oh, my goodness. So you didn't even have a home to come to?
No. My 2 girls had never been away from me. And my younger daughter was exactly the same age as I was when war broke out.
Oh, wow.
So at that young age, she formed something about her father right there and then. So actually, the adjustment was when we came out of northeast Philadelphia, because I'd be walking around going, boxes, little boxes, and they all looked just the same. It's a song. Because I didn't have a car. I had 4 children, northeast Philadelphia, and no car.
Wow.
And my baby got a fever, he was very ill, and I'm running down the road finding a doctor. I mean, I knew nothing. It was horrendous. And then we moved out to Bucks County.
Yes.
And somehow or other, when my children were in school, I used to go to school board meetings and they're talking about drugs. And I said, "What are you doing about that?" And from then on, off we went.
Oh, wow. So that started your educational career. Do you want to tell us a
did.
little bit about that?
Yes. Well, I had some credits and things from the London School of Economics, but they were not recognised. So I had to start right from the beginning for my bachelor's, which was in addictions. And then, what did I do after that? I had a
I'm just
break.
going to stop you there and
Yes.
ask you why you picked addictions. Because I think there's a story behind that too.
Yes, well, I'm in recovery myself, and I have no anonymity. I can imagine people going, oh my God, what is she saying? But if I can help people by saying, look, I went through that and here I am,
Yes.
that's good enough message for me. It was just because it was rampant in the schools, and the schools were saying we don't have a problem. So that's what really got me going, because my children were right in there. And then as a result of that, there were all these deaths.
Oh.
And that's what got me into working with thanatology. The study of death, actually, is what that means.
Yes. But working with that sort of was the precursor to you working with parents who've lost a child.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That is my specialty, work with the parents of murdered children. They are amazing. They inspire me. I don't know how they get out of bed in the morning. Their courage is utterly amazing. And what really stuns me is how they trust me. It always amazes me.
Well, trust is earned.
Well,
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
But I just love them. I absolutely love them. I would do anything for them.
So you got your bachelor's in addictions, and then, of course, you went on further.
Yes, I got my master's, and I was very lucky because Marywood University would have these off-campus things, so you could go for 2 weekends and get 3 credits and things like that. But they didn't know anything about thanatology.
No.
So I taught my way through my master's.
So you went and studied it and then taught it as you went along?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. It was
So-
very helpful financially too, with 4 children.
Yes, I can only
Because
imagine.
I was on my own by then.
Wow. So give us some examples of, so what happened after the PhD? Because now you've got 4 children, you've left your husband, you're just trying to pull things together, and I can't even imagine how that even happens, particularly in a strange country where you don't have a network to pull on of old friends or whatever.
Yes.
And now you're studying. You must have been studying sort of overnight when they were all in bed.
Oh yes, of course, absolutely. But it was worth it. I needed to have that. I can't even explain what it is. It was like something in my brain that said, you have to do this. And I don't know if that's connected with my past or not. I have a watch me personality, right? You tell me I can't do something and watch me. And basically...
The rebel at work.
Oh, yes, someone called me the other day a maverick, and I said, thank you. That's the best thing I've been called for years. So now I'm Yvonne Kay Maverick. I like that. But I've been like that because I took everything that happened in my life, I've turned into lessons.
Yes.
And I'm also grateful because it's given me this ability to understand. I mean, I say to the bereaved parents, I don't know how you feel. I never will know how you feel. But I've got a very good idea.
Yes.
I mean, I've had 2 miscarriages, so they count that. I don't, because it was such a long time ago, and I have 4 children now. But I empathise those who do have it, and stillborn. I work with that too.
Yes.
And the grief is very different, and what I work with is trying to stop people being competitive about grief. They're farther ahead than I am. I'm not doing really well. Look at them. Everybody grieves differently. And more attention needs to be paid to the fathers. The fathers tell me that people phone them up and say, well, how's she doing?
Right.
How's she doing?
As if they're not
Yes.
part of this.
And so they've got this awful culture thing that says they have to be strong, which is a word I don't like anyway. And they don't have a chance to grieve. And also these ridiculous statistics come in, like, when you have a death of a child, people don't stay together. That's simply not true. It's not true. Somebody get divorced, well, who doesn't?
Yes.
Not because of that.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I emphasize, no two people grieve in the same way, and you're both those two people.
You're unique.
Yeah. And to be able to cry is such a sign of strength in a man.
Yes.
It really is.
We really need to rethink
Yes.
how we process all of that. I couldn't agree with you more. We're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, I'm interested to hear, because I know that at some point following your PhD, you found yourself addressing the United Nations. So that's a story to come after our break.
Oh, gosh.
Welcome. If you've just joined us, my name's Sue Begent and I'm your host today. I'm a business coach who focuses on empowering women, solo entrepreneurs and small business owners, people who've had a career and now want to use their experience and talents to support others and grow a successful business while they do it. My focus is to help them get the tools and skills they need to create a consistent flow of great clients and a reliable income to go with it. Check me out at https://www.cocreationzone.com or Sue Begent at the Co-Creation Zone. All the guests on my show are members of my Facebook group, Smart Women Who Mean Business. And if you are a smart woman who means business, please join us. It's my great pleasure today to be interviewing Dr. Yvonne Kay. Yvonne is a PhD addiction and bereavement specialist who believes in the power of the human spirit. At 86 years old, her career and her rebel spirit are alive and well. She's a spiritual coach, and her philosophy is laughter is a miracle healer. She works with bereaved parents, veterans with PTSD, people struggling with addiction, and those with end-stage cancer. Her story is one of redemption, of an indomitable spirit in the face of deeply disturbing challenges, from poverty, war, and early forced separation from her family, having only the clothes she stood up in, to addressing the United Nations on the subject of international drug dealing. Along the way, she raised 4 children, became a radio talk show host, an interfaith minister, an author, columnist, keynote speaker and trainer for corporations, to name just a few. And of course, she earned that PhD. Intuitive and creative, Yvonne's abilities and capabilities are born from living life, from feeling pain, from experiencing grief, happiness, love and generosity, coupled with a thirst for understanding and knowledge, quenched by formal training and certifications. Dr. Kay is the real deal and total package in a crowded field of clinicians and therapists. You can reach Yvonne via her website, www.yvonnekaywisdom.com. That's YVONNEKAYWISDOM.com. Enjoy the show. Welcome back. It's Sue Begent here at Sue Begent Interviews Smart Women Who Mean Business. And as you've just heard, my guest is Dr. Yvonne Kay. So, Yvonne, I want to ask you about somebody that I know was an enormous influence on your life, and that's Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yes.
So tell us about how you first came to know of him, and then I think you have a story.
I do. It was when I was in northeast Philadelphia, and so very, very homesick and depressed. And a woman who was the mother of one of the children, my children, a befriended, came over and said, I want you to read this book. And I said, I'm not reading this book. Came back next week. Third time, I'm not leaving till you read the book. Well, that book changed my life.
And the title of the book?
Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. And it's just, it's magic to me. It's my Bible. As an interfaith minister, I'm not supposed to say that. Nevertheless. And I have his picture up in my office. And did you want me to tell you about the phone call?
Absolutely.
Then? Okay.
Because you tell me, but for me, Viktor Frankl was a name that I knew in the UK. I'm not so sure he's as well known here, but so yes, you do have a story. And knowing that he was such, that book was so important to a lot of people, and he was very significant. I think that adds significance to your story. Yeah. I'm going to invite you to tell it.
Yes. It was in the top 10 of all time, that little book. It's a
Yes.
very little book. And he was in during the war in Austria, and the United States gave a visa to him, but not his wife or his mother, father. So he decided to stay. He was in 4 concentration camps, ended up in Auschwitz. And the one story I really love to tell, because this whole book is about choice. That's what it is. You can choose how you feel, and I never knew that.
Yes.
And he was working in the camps. His feet were frostbitten. He had no shoes, gloves, and he was laying rail tracks. And this little bird flew down and landed on the tracks and looked right up into his eyes, their big, brown, sparkly eyes. And he chose to believe that was his wife's soul. He could have said it was just a bird.
Yes.
But that's how simple choice can be. It doesn't eliminate the pain, the anguish, nothing like that. But the secret of doing that is to deal with it and not pretend it's not there. I believe in therapy. I'm a therapist. I go to therapy.
Yep.
And I believe that therapy isn't necessarily for sick people, it's for people who want to feel better.
Yes.
And when you are looking at something that's as massive as a war in your own country, you need other help, people that can be more objective, compassionate, but objective, which is how I am with the people that come to see me.
Yes.
And also, there's this attitude that you'll forget it. Now, there's a phrase. I didn't create this phrase, but I love it. Overcoming is not the same as getting over.
Right.
So overcoming is getting on with your life and doing what you do, which is what so many people do. But you're not going to forget.
Yes.
Never. So all his family perished in other camps. And he came over here. And then a young nurse said to me one day, I've heard you speak all over the place, different subjects. You always bring Viktor Frankl in. And I went. She said, why don't you...
And by the way, if you're listening to this, she's just touched her heart.
Yes, boom, boom.
Yeah.
She said, why don't you go and see him? So I thought, So long story short, I was sitting up on my bed and I had like the next 6 years of journals up there, and I called to talk to the woman, whoever it is that makes the arrangement, and he answered the phone. I still get the chills. And he said, Viktor Frankl, and I went, oh. And when I get excited, I sound like a chipmunk. So I'm going, oh my God, oh, Dr. Frankl, oh, I don't know what to say. And he said, I can't understand English quite that fast. So, oh my, 15 glorious minutes of my life I spoke to this man who lives in my heart.
Wow.
And he was so, he wasn't humble, but he had humility. And that book was a great surprise to him. He was amazed at that book.
That it resonated with so many people.
Oh, so many people. And then he asked, what do you do? So I told him what I did. And then he said this memorable, that I just get the shivers every time I think about it. And he said to me, and you admire me? Just like that. And I was speechless, which doesn't happen too often. Absolutely. So I said, can I come and see you? He said, I'm really not well, and my wife is frail. So, of course, my family said, he knew about you. He pretended he was sick. Okay. So I said, well, I'd love a book. So he's sent me something, a little piece of paper that I could stick in the book that I bought.
Oh,
but it just remains one of the most amazing periods of my life.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
So I have to ask you
Yes.
about ending up in front of the United Nations.
Well,
and there's a story. There has to be a story.
Yes. So. Actually, there was a woman there, and I can't remember what committee, this gigantic gigantic committee in the United Nations, but she was a listener.
Oh, a listener to your radio show.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in a minute.
And she phoned me and asked me, would I be willing?
Oh,
and
wonderful.
I said, certainly. So the station hired a bus and listeners were able to come, and they came with me, which was very
That's
lovely.
fantastic.
And I had the time of my life because I was with two men who, at that time, there's no laptops or anything like that.
Yes.
So they've got papers like this, and I walk in with nothing, and I thought she was going to faint. Can I come out to your car and bring anything in for you? And I said, I don't have anything. It's me. Oh. And I had all these marvellous questions about the trafficking.
So you were asked to talk to them about international drug dealing.
Yes. Yes.
And so what was it that, because nothing that I think we've talked about so far has pointed specifically to you getting to that point, so that I think we need to fill in some information here.
Yes. I was very opposed to people who were using drugs thrown into prison. And I wanted to go after the people who were trading.
Right.
And that's what she heard me say.
Ah.
So when I went there and I was saying, you know, the rules are just insufficient, you're imprisoning the wrong people. I volunteered at Greaterford Prison, I know what's going on, and things have to change, because unless you change it on an international level, this will never ever alter what's going on. Well, of course they didn't listen. So we have this massive opioid overdose problem here right now.
Yes, indeed we do.
Now they did some things, they caught someone, names, but he was a big shot in one of the South American countries. And I think they did two, and then nothing. Now there are interpolitical police that are still working on that, but it's a very, very challenging thing to do.
So you went there to really be part
Yes.
of that whole initiative.
Absolutely.
To try and influence
Yep.
and de-escalate. Wow, that must have been an amazing experience.
It was huge.
Yes.
I had no idea that chamber was so gigantic.
Yes. I don't know if any of our listeners or viewers have actually been in there, but if you've ever done a tour,
Yes.
it is
Isn't
huge.
it massive?
Yes.
So yes, I was treated like royalty. You know.
Wonderful. Well, we won't go. And people say to me that I sound like the Queen.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
And then I say to them, and it ends there.
Yes, that's right. Stop and So let's talk about your radio show, because this is something that I think you did for 16 years.
18.
18 years, yes. So you had a two-way talk show.
I did.
On WWDB radio for 18 years. So tell us about the types, when were you on? Because I think you were on some ungodly hour. And tell
11 till 3 in the morning.
My word. And so what was the show like? What were you covering? What were you, what
I
types
was covering life's challenges. So what we've discussed, people would be calling in about that, about all those things. And some of them were hilarious. I can't repeat some of the language. And things that they called me, which was hysterical, because one young man called me something outrageous.
Unmentionable.
Yeah. And then 5 years later I met him in Eagleville Rehab, and he came up to me and he said, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's so funny. He remembered.
It was very funny. But I would have guests. For example, I would have representatives from the Compassionate Friends, which is an organisation founded in England, actually, with a hospital chaplain. And that is for the parents, friends, families who've lost a child to death. And they would be there because people didn't understand, and they did a wonderful job.
Yes.
And I had a young psychologist, a woman, and she'd advertised on my show. So I invited her to come. She came with two of her patients, two men, her patients. She could not speak.
Because you were so terrified of being on the radio?
I guess.
Oh dear.
Her two patients were wonderful. The two men were wonderful. And I kept saying, what do you think of this? And she was, like a deer caught in the headlight.
Yes.
And I've had some...
That would be tricky on a radio show.
Well, I'm telling them now.
Yes, she's here.
Yes,
She's really here.
Yes. But these two men were phenomenal. I mean, I had a great show with these two. And then I was telling you about the man who called and said that any woman over 35 is over the hill. And I didn't have to work for 4 hours because people were calling in, and this 90-year-old woman said, "Send him over." I was absolutely in hysterics. And so sometimes it was very funny.
Yes.
I mean, people would call and tell me jokes.
Yes, right.
And people met on my show in as much as there was some major challenge in their family and there was no support group.
Yes.
And they created one.
Yes.
It was just wonderful.
I was just thinking that at that time, so just refresh my memory, what year did you actually start the radio show?
1982. And then 2000 it was over.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Because today I think, there's a lot more openness, acceptance of seeking help, and there are resources to go to.
Absolutely.
But I think I can imagine in the early 80s that this must have been amazing.
It
and also
was.
Anonymous.
It was. I mean, not the Compassionate Friends, of course. The Parents of Murdered Children. Now, that was created, and I'm ashamed to say I can't remember the woman's face, but it was Sid Vicious had murdered her daughter. Remember that one?
Yes, I do.
And I can't remember her name. Anyway,
I can't either. Yes.
She started that in City Hall in Philadelphia, and that's how I got involved with the families of murder. And also I'm involved with victim services in Montgomery County because I work if there's been a rape and a homicide. Right. And they're marvellous. I can't say enough about victim services in Montgomery County. They are amazing.
I mean, it's so good to hear that today there are people on the end of the phone and also available.
Oh, yes. And the volunteers are the backbone of any organisation. They're volunteers that are phenomenal. So
I'm going to change the tone a little here now because I want to ask you about John.
Oh, John. Can you see me? You only have to mention his name. Look at a big beam. John.
So you were 55?
And he was 61.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us about it.
Well, it was recommended that he meet me. And he said, I don't want to meet any British doctor, because he was former Royal Navy and whatever, and didn't.
So he was also British.
Yeah, didn't believe in therapy. And I said, no. The last thing I need is another Brit in my life. No, thank you. So they nagged for about 3 weeks, and finally I said, send him over. So he walks in my office, and I can't tell you what I said to myself. I just looked and went, oh my God. And so, as a therapist, it was my job to get rid of him.
Yes,
I'm very ethical.
Say because you can't date a patient.
Yeah, I'm very ethical.
Yes.
So I saw him for about 3 weeks, and as he describes it, it was 10% therapy and 90% hilarity. He was so funny. I couldn't get him to take anything seriously. He had no idea how I felt. So I said to him, look, I'm going to refer you to another therapist. Why? Because you're not taking this seriously. You're wasting my time and your money. I'm not going to another therapist. I said, well, I can't see you. Go to AA. If it's not you, it's nobody. I said,
so there you go. So that was, 27 years together?
Yes. 27. We waited almost a year. I mean, he did, and then he just called one day and said, you're not my therapist, do you want to go out to dinner? Oh, wonderful. And I knew he was the right man for me, because when he got the bill, he said, oh, it would have been cheaper to have a session. He was, I have to tell you this, I wish I'd brought photographs for you, but one day I was going to see 6 bereaved mothers, one after the other. And look, they take a chunk of me. I can't.
Yes, of course.
I'm pretty good with boundaries. I can't bring a child back, whatever. But it takes a chunk. So when I went home, I thought, oh God, thank God he's there. I just want a cup of tea. So I go home and the door's locked. I thought, what's going on? So I bang on the door and he opens the door. And he's standing there in a raincoat and his Irish cap.
Right.
And then he just opens his jacket and he's got my underwear on.
Oh my goodness.
So I slid down the wall. I couldn't stop. I was almost stopped breathing. I was laughing for about half an hour, and that took care.
Yeah.
And
And you
that's
felt-
what he would do.
Yeah.
That's what he would do.
made you laugh.
And I think that's what developed my humour even more.
Mm.
Not that he negated what I was going through at all.
Yeah.
But it's like when the children come home from school, you say to the children, how was school? They don't want to tell you how school was. They've been there all day, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
So that's how he thought. I was seeing these marvellous women, and he knew I'd be crawling up the stairs,
Yeah.
and that's
And you
how he
did.
handled it.
I think that's a wonderful moment at which we're going to take another break. But when we come back, we might ask about your tattoos.
Oh,
But the first of which arrived aged 82.
Oh.
But more on that in a moment.
absolutely.
Welcome. If you've just joined us, my name's Sue Begent and I'm your host today. I'm a business coach who focuses on empowering women, solo entrepreneurs and small business owners, people who've had a career and now want to use their experience and talents to support others and grow a successful business while they do it. My focus is to help them get the tools and skills they need to create a consistent flow of great clients and a reliable income to go with it. Check me out at https://www.cocreationzone.com or Sue Begent at the Co-Creation Zone. All the guests on my show are members of my Facebook group, Smart Women Who Mean Business. And if you are a smart woman who means business, please join us. It's my great pleasure today to be interviewing Dr. Yvonne Kay. Yvonne is a PhD addiction and bereavement specialist who believes in the power of the human spirit. At 86 years old, her career and her rebel spirit are alive and well. She's a spiritual coach and her philosophy is laughter is a miracle healer. She works with bereaved parents, veterans with PTSD, people struggling with addiction, and those with end-stage cancer. Her story is one of redemption, of an indomitable spirit in the face of deeply disturbing challenges, from poverty, war, and early forced separation from her family, having only the clothes she stood up in, to addressing the United Nations on the subject of international drug dealing. Along the way, she raised 4 children, became a radio talk show host, an interfaith minister, an author, columnist, keynote speaker, and trainer for corporations, to name just a few. And of course, she earned that PhD. Intuitive and creative, Yvonne's abilities and capabilities are born from living life, from feeling pain, from experiencing grief, happiness, love, and generosity, coupled with a thirst for understanding and knowledge, quenched by formal training and certifications. Dr. Kay is the real deal and total package in a crowded field of clinicians and therapists. You can reach Yvonne via her website, www.yvonnekaywisdom.com. That's YVONNEKAYEWISDOM.com. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Sue Begent Interviews Smart Women Who Means Business. And you just heard my guest today, Dr. Yvonne Kay. So Yvonne,
Yeah.
age 82, you decided to get your first tattoo. Now, I think we already know that there's a rebel that lives in there, but
Yes.
I think there's a story, so please share.
Actually, it was my doctor's fault.
Oh, really?
Yes, my doctor, Dr. Fissel, who I love. And after John died, I went to see him and I said, you know, he was immediately cremated and I'm not an ash person. He's in the ocean going towards the Irish Sea.
Right.
So, but I want something. He said his wife had, when her father died, took the one sentence out of a card he wrote and had it tattooed. And I
Oh,
thought,
my. Oh, how wonderful.
so I did that, and that's all it was going to be. And my veterans used to say, "You're going to get a sleeve." I said, "I'm not getting," in all my dignity, "I'm not getting a sleeve." So every time I got another one, they would go. So,
you're on your way.
so this whole arm is John's memorial arm.
Oh, wow.
So I carry it. We've got the two nationalities.
Mm-hmm.
There's me, Dragon Woman.
Uh-huh.
That's the Royal Navy.
Yes.
And this is to infinity. We always answer infinity. And this would apply to what you do.
So I understand that getting one.
It's addictive. They warned me and I didn't listen.
So what is it about having a tattoo? Because, you know, I obviously I haven't stepped over this line myself.
Well, it's hard to explain. I mean, it's an addiction once you start. And I say, I'm not going above the elbow. And my grandson keeps saying, look, you've got space there. You've got space there. And I say, you're not supposed to be encouraging me. So the next one
is very cool.
Yes, on our anniversary, which is our anniversary is 8/8/88.
Yes.
And so I'm going to have wings, angel wings somewhere. But I might have to go above the elbow.
Oh, my word.
But I love it. And I had a marvellous incident because I was going to have my hair cut. And, you know, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of ageism in this country.
Yes.
So people look at me and they say, this sweet little old lady. And this woman was talking to me. And the woman came out to shampoo the hair. And she said, oh, let this sweet little old lady go. Well, the shampoo girl nearly died laughing because they know me.
Yes.
So I stood up and I went, oh, itching. And I thought she was going to fall off the chair. It's like, take a look at that lady. I'm not a little old lady. I'm a maverick. I'm a rebel. So,
yes.
And when I'm working with recovering people, you know, they come in and they're smothered and their noses and whatever. And they look at me like, oh, what is she going to tell us? Mm-hmm. And then I just go.
And instantly.
And I get them.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yeah.
But the main thing is it's John's memorial arm that I carry with me. And someone said to me the other day, what do you think John would think about this? And I said, well, if he was alive, I wouldn't have it. What is?
I have to say that when I was doing a little bit of research for this show, I heard you tell a story about, I think, the prison story. And we have just a few moments left, and I really would like to invite you to share this.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so this is back in the 70s. I was asked to go to a major penitentiary because the recovery was bad. It was like a revolving door. So it wasn't Greaterford. There was another prison further upstate. And I was locked in this room because they wouldn't talk if a guard was in there. Mm. And then this particular evening, they were so apathetic. It was like, bleh. And I discovered it was a basketball final, so they didn't want to be with me, right?
So you were keeping them from the basketball?
Oh, yes. Mm. So I was with them for half an hour, and finally I said, I am fed up with you. I've better things to do, like they cared. I'm leaving, so keep your peckers up. And they just fell on the floor. They're howling with laughter. I think, what on earth are they talking about?
And just for the record, for those of you who are wondering, when I first heard Yvonne say this, I thought, okay,
so
that seems like, it really means keep your spirits up.
That's right. Keep your chin up.
Yes.
So the guard came in, asked me what's going on, and I said, I don't know, I just told them to keep their peckers on here. We try and keep them down in here. Like, what are you talking about? So he took me outside and explained. And that story's gone everywhere.
I can imagine.
Everywhere. And I always protest and say I'm not going to tell it, but I do.
Of course. Of course.
And they were so... The class size doubled the next time. And it's like, oh, how can you improve on keep your pecker up? What else is there to say? Really? So,
she's funny.
Oh, yes.
Apart from anything else.
Oh, yeah.
So humour's become very, very important in your work. And,
absolutely huge.
You know, you talk about laughter as the miracle healer. Mm-hmm. Explain a little bit more about what you mean by that. Because, I mean, you are dealing with people who are in the darkest
yes.
place.
when they're in the darkest place, it gives them a release to say what they wouldn't say when they weren't in the darkest place. And so they give themselves freedom. I don't know how much time I've got.
Yeah, you have a few minutes.
So I had this woman who was a very vital woman in her 70s, and she turned around one day in the kitchen, became a quadriplegic. Oh. So she said to her daughter, I want to talk to that English woman. So I went over to her apartment in northeast Philadelphia after she'd gone through all these things in nursing homes and heaven knows what. And she said to me, I'm going to die on Tuesday. I said, are you? Because you don't argue.
No.
Mm-hmm. And I want you to do my funeral. I said, okay. And I don't want my brother to speak because he never shuts up. And my sister is like, and she's going on and on. I'm thinking, what am I doing? Family therapy? So anyway, I went home, and then I got a call on Monday at 11 o'clock at night. And her daughter said, I'm so sorry, but please come. My mother wants you. So I belt over to northeast Philadelphia, and I go up, and she throws everybody out the room. And she said, I want to tell you something. Come close. Well, long story short, I ended up in the bed with her.
Okay.
And she said, I really need to tell you this. And I said, I'm not a priest. I don't do confessions. She says, did you hear the one about the woman who died? She's telling me a joke, right? She's going to die the next day. Right. So I did the funeral with a rabbi. She's Jewish, so within 24 hours, we did it.
Yes.
And I did exactly what I just did. Because they knew her.
Yes.
So, do you want to hear the joke?
Sure.
Okay. So this woman died and went to heaven. She'd been very ill. She went to heaven, and there's St. Peter at the gate and said, welcome. I'm happy to see you, but you're very young. What can I do? So she looks over his shoulder and says, what's that? That's beautiful. He said, oh, that's heaven. Well, what do you have to do to get in? Well, you spell a word. What's the word? Love. L-O-V-E, simple. All these people came up. 6 weeks later, St. Peter calls her and says, look, I've got to go to a conference. Will you mind the gate? So she comes and minds the gate, and they all come up, the same thing. All of a sudden, who shows up but her husband? She said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, after you died, I married that cute little nurse, and I hated the house we lived in, so I bought a mansion, and we traveled all over the world. What are you doing here? Well, I was skiing in Switzerland, and I went into a tree. What's that behind you? She said, oh, that's heaven. How do you get in? We have to spell a word. What's the word? Czechoslovakia. I can't spell it. And this woman's telling me this joke. And right in the middle, she says, you've heard it, haven't you? So no, I said I haven't. But I told the joke right there. And that's how they knew her. I don't do funerals. I do celebrations of life. It's different if it's a child. It's different. But with older people who have really been significant in their attitude, this woman was a rebel too. Yes. And so being sad and gloomy and whatever just didn't apply to her. Yeah. Yeah. And then I had another one, a twin. He was 64 and died very suddenly, and I did that funeral, and the wife said to me, he would be with you 5 minutes, he'd be talking just like you. Right. Life and soul. So that was another one that was just cheerful.
One of the things that you mentioned when I was talking to you the other day was that you all work with cancer patients who are nearing the end of, and one of the observations that you made was that they are very funny. Oh my goodness.
Well, I have them. They're not in the final stages, but some are in recovery, and I have this group at Gilda's. Are you familiar with Gilda's Club?
I'm not.
It's made for Gilda Radner, who died from ovarian cancer. She was in Saturday Night Live. Hysterically funny. She died very young. And her husband, a very famous comedian whose name escapes me, and her sister, I think, created Gilda's Club. And Gilda's Club is a wonderful place all over the country where cancer patients and their families can go for all different kinds of classes, yoga, everything. Oh. It's not a treatment place.
Okay.
So I do one, obviously, on humour. laughing when nothing seems funny and when it is. So I have people who are in recovery, in remission. I have their care sharers. That's my name, not caregivers, care sharers, because that's what I was for 10 years with John.
Yes.
And then they have people who are still in treatment, and it's absolutely hilarious. I mean, some of them tell jokes and other people funny experience they had in chemo.
Right.
I mean, it's just astonishing that when they're in an environment where they feel safe and no one's going to say, well, you look cheerful, you must have got over it. They know that we know what they're going through. And this is like a balance for them. And they love it. So I volunteer that twice a month. And it's so popular, and they're saying their family can't come because they work. So I'm starting an evening one in July. And I love it as much as they do. That's why I use the word care sharer, because I get as much from them as they do from me.
Oh, it's the same as a coach.
Of course, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I am so sad to say that we are really nearing the end of our interview, because I've really enjoyed our chat.
I have too.
If you do still, you run classes and you have clients.
Yes.
So just quickly before we end, just give people an idea of what types of things that you do, and then how they would get hold of you if they're listening to this and they would love to contact you.
Well, they can go on my website.
Right.
And
which is
very
by the way,
simple.
www.yvonnekaywisdom.com.
Yes. They could do that. And actually, I only see individuals where it's grief.
Okay.
And maybe addiction. But I prefer to do groups. And I love to do groups with women who don't believe in themselves, kind of thing that you do. And I did that for a long, long time. And then now, for the families who've lost their loved ones to overdose, which is getting, unfortunately, worse and worse and worse. So that, and then I'm open to anything. You know, I'd love to go back to universities to do courses. I'm very open to whatever's out there.
Yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so very much, Dr. Yvonne Kay. And thank you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Yes, absolutely.